بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر المحجلين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا متقبلا يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك اللهم ونتوب إليك. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our 9th lesson on the book of Salah from from Nur al-Idaah wa Najat al-Arwah of Imam Abu al-Ikhlas Hassan ibn Ammar al-Shurmbulali rahimahullah ta'ala. And in today's session we will continue with the disliked acts in prayer, inshallah ta'ala. And we have with us Hassan today as usual. Assalamu alaikum, Hassan.
Alaikum assalam, Shaykh. How are you? Okay.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Well, how are you? How's Ramadan going?
Alhamdulillah, Ramzan's come and nearly gone, Shaykh, without
Alhamdulillah.
knowing.
And how's the fasting? All good?
Very good. It's been a brilliant Ramzan so far.
MashaAllah. That's good to hear. Alhamdulillah. Are you ready?
Ji, Shaykh, I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay, ready to all firing all cylinders.
We'll see how the next hour pans out.
Let's see how the next MashaAllah. Preserving the energy. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. We were on the dislike acts. We're on page 204, I think, right?
Yeah, page
And
204.
did we talk about counting the ayat? I think that was it. We're on, weren't we?
So that's the one we're starting on.
Okay, Bismillah. Off you go then.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman. Disliked acts. To count the verses of the Quran on the hand as well as the tasbih is disapproved.
Yeah, so not the act of counting, but to use the hand like literally when you're in the salah, you are, like that, using your hand like counting on the fingers like this, not pressing them. So often you're told like Salat al-Tasbih, you can press your hands, like, you're doing like this, subhanallah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, subhanallah, alhamdulillah. So when you press the fingers, that's not counting on the fingers like this. So it literally means counting on using the fingers one by one, or the digits of the fingers to count. That's what is disliked and not good regarding the prayer. Yep. Right. Next one.
So in Salatul Tasbih, obviously, you're counting in, it's 15 and then 10, 10, 10, 10.
That's
So the
right.
first
Yeah.
50, so you shouldn't really use the fingers to count 15. If you press on your fingers onto, one finger onto the, onto the hand or onto the knee or the thighs in sajda, if you're pressing the finger into the ground or anything, that's fine. But the counting with the fingers, using, the thumb on the fingers, as we would normally do, that's disliked, yeah?
Yeah, that's disliked, yeah. So the pressuring of the fingers, whether it's on the carpet, on your body, it's fine, but not like literally, like if you're praying and doing this, like that. No, don't do that. Don't count with the fingers like that. If you're praying and you're just pressuring that, I've done 1, I've done 2, I've done 3, I've done 4, that's okay. That's obviously sometimes you need a bit of help to remember the numbers. If you use your fingers the pressuring way, that's fine. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Next one.
It is disliked for the Imam to stand alone in the mihrab or to stand alone on a raised platform or higher ground.
That's right. So that means the Imam shouldn't distinguish himself from the remaining congregation by standing on a platform or raising the station, unless it's a very slight amount and it's just normal. Sometimes that might be the case, but generally keep on the same level. It's disliked to have different levels for any of the congregation, but especially the Imam, because you don't want to stand out.
it says it's disliked for the Imam to stand alone in the mihrab. I don't know if
So
that
also,
makes like,
to stand in the mihrab, meaning the niche, which is the opening in the front of the masjid. They have like a mihrab, an open area like into the wall, if you like. It comes. That niche is not for standing in during the congregational prayer, unless there's an issue of space, right? And you need to move forward as possible. So the imam moves forward. That's fine. Moving forward for that reason is all good. But in general, the imam shouldn't really use the what do you call it, the mihrab for the prayers, right? Um, the mihrab is um, normally not used for the prayers, right? Because again, in congregation, it seems like the imam is isolating himself from everyone else. If it's needed, the space is needed, you need a new saf, then push everyone forward. But if you don't, then to pray outside of the mihrab is better. Yeah.
is that not the case? Normally, sorry, just need a little bit of clarity on that one. The mihrab is obviously the niche area, the little bit of area in front of the imam.
Sorry, say that again.
There's not enough. The mihrab. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go on, carry on.
Yeah. So the mihrab in our masjids is the little bit of area, the niche in front of the imam at the front of the masjid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally, there's not enough space for the imam to stand inside there anyway.
No.
Is this point kind of making it in places where the mihrab is big enough for the imam to stand in?
Yeah, it means not, well, most of the time it is, Hassan. It's
Oh,
only
okay.
like on Fridays, like Jummah, Eid prayer, something like this. You're not gonna have space. Not most masajid, even if small, in terms of the capacity, you only have a few softs, couple of softs, half a soft sometimes. So you don't need to use the mihrab, right? Usually a lot of the masajid they use the back hole or the rear end
Smaller room.
rather
Yeah.
than go all the way to
Yeah.
the front of the masjid, depending on the setting of the masjid. So yeah, but generally, most prayers you'll pray outside of the mihrab, yeah. Whereas obviously busy prayers like Jummah, for instance, they will, probably use the mihrab, of course, yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
In congregational prayer, if there is room in a front, if there is room in a row in front, then to stand behind it is disliked.
Yeah,
If
so
there's
basically
room in
not
the row in
complete,
front,
not
yeah, yeah,
completing rows in front. So
yeah.
we've got a um saf and there's like 3 spaces left. Somebody goes and starts a new one. That's disliked. It's not invalid because in the masjid you join the congregation, even if you're standing behind them, as long as you're close and in the masjid anywhere really, you're part of the congregation. But it's disliked to leave gaps, any gaps for that matter, even within the saf amongst you, to leave large gaps is not good. Unless there's a need like today, if you have prayed at a masjid recently, they've obviously practicing social distancing, those few people that are praying at the masajid to fulfill the obligation or the right of the masjid. So they don't stand next to each other, they stand about a saf apart, a good couple of meters now. I think they're practicing that pretty well, from what I understand. Yeah, so unless there's a reason, you shouldn't have any gaps, should be very close together, and you shouldn't start a new row unless the previous row has been completed. Yep.
Okay. To wear clothes that have pictures of living things are disliked. This is also the case if there are pictures suspended above or behind one's head or between one's hands on the floor. Likewise, being near a picture during prayer is disliked, except if it is tiny, or the head of the picture is missing, or the picture resembles objects without a soul.
Yeah, so um, during prayer, you don't want to have anything, um, and you don't have anything that disturbs you, and you don't want to have anything that has any pictures. When it says pictures here, it means of living beings, right? Of an animal, something that has a body, a head, and that kind of thing. And to have these, whether they're in front or to the right, to the left, um, between one hand on the floor, or anywhere near one, is disliked. Yeah, it says Likewise, being near a picture during prayer is disliked, except if it is tiny. So if it's like the logos you get on shirts, sometimes they're tiny, unnoticeable. Most of the time, it's just for the label, or whatever, right? Or the head of the picture is missing. So he was talking about living beings. There's no head. It's just maybe half a body or some other reason. I don't know what would be without a head, but yeah. Or the picture resembles objects without a soul, such as a tree, for instance. If there are pictures of that, I suppose. And in those circumstances, there won't be a dislike. But if it's a normal picture of an animal, of a human being, something it's discernible, it's not too small, like, and it's in front of a person, it's going to be in the one's view somewhere. Then it's disliked to be praying like that, right? Because of the fact that pictures are sometimes used to be worshipped or represent, worship and idols. Pictures were used as well, images. Surah can also mean an actual um, statue or something like that as well. So yeah, so and on all of that kind of stuff, although we're not praying to it, if that happens to be the case, right? On some occasions, you may be in a place where there are pictures, where there are stuff around. You just do your best to ignore it, but it doesn't mean your prayer is invalid or you're not allowed to pray there. It's just better to avoid all of that. So it's disliked to be praying around that kind of situation, whether it's a physical idol, or meaning 3D, or if it's a picture, etc., on the wall or something like that. Try and avoid these places when you're praying. But sometimes every now and then you go somewhere, sometimes you don't realize you pray and then, oh, there was a picture over there for all that time. I didn't realize it, which is good. You didn't realize it, so it's okay. But yeah, try to avoid that. If not, then it's disliked, to do that. Yeah. Next one.
To pray while there is a hot pot or a brazier containing coal right in front of the praying person.
Yeah, so this is now referring to hot pot. I don't know. It says tandoor. Tandoor is the tandoor. So in Arabic they call the tandoor. You have tandoori roti, which means basically this what do you call it? Like opening in the ground, that cemented kind of structure, mud kind of structure, which is used. You burn stuff in it, and then the heat is used to cook things, right? Roti, tandoori naan. They're more common in other climates, other countries, but they do make them now here in back of restaurants and stuff. They have a tandoor there, literally made of this brick structure, etc. Some people have these in their homes, like the garden of their homes, or outside kind of thing. Then to pray towards that is disliked because it's fire, things are burnt in there, and you don't want to pray towards something that is the purpose, or the purpose of is burning things, fire worship, etc. So to avoid that. And similarly, a kanun, brazier containing cola, that means like a like like what we'd have today is, you'd call it like the what do you do barbecue in, Hassan?
Yeah,
That thing, yeah.
you have them little pots that you can carry hot coal in.
Hot coals in, yeah. So that kind of thing we do use for barbecues, or just the oven and stove now, right? You got burning oven, stove kind of thing, fire, those things. Those kind of things shouldn't have in front of you whilst praying, right? You should not pray towards such things. Yeah, that's disliked. Okay, next one.
To pray directly in front of a group of people who are sleeping.
Yeah, with the fear that they're going to disturb you, you're going to disturb them, or it's just not really appropriate. But if there's no fear of anything arising, like it's a family member or something like that, and they're completely gone, it's not that disliked. It says it's disapproved for fear of laughing or making eye contact that would cause one to be shy or lose concentration. If, however, this was not the case, then there's no dislike. Yeah, see that I showed you, the Prophet used to offer the prayer while he used to sleep across in his bed in front of him, so she would be sleeping, he'd pray, and he would when he would want to pray with it, he would wake me up right towards the end of the night. That would be the case. Yeah, so that's the case. Next one.
To wipe away dirt from the forehead that will not affect one during the prayer.
Yeah, so we said before that if you need to wipe something away, I think we said it before, then obviously once for the sake of the disturbance. But if there's no disturbance, there's nothing, then you shouldn't even really know you've got something there that hasn't disturbed you. Then just to fidget around, move, unnecessary movements are disliked. So that would come under that, basically. Yep.
Reciting none other than one particular surah is disliked. unless one does so to ease the matter or to imitate the recitation of the Prophet ﷺ to receive blessings.
Yeah, so to specify one surah for your recitation is disliked with the neglect of the other surahs if you therefore have memorized them, right? So if you memorize, let's say, 10 surahs, 20 surahs, then you should use or you should recite as much of them as possible and change. And that's what you one of the wisdoms of having surahs memorized is for, is you recite them in your salah. Right now with Taraweeh, hopefully people are reciting more of these various surahs, or going over them in their Taraweeh prayers. Unless you stick to a particular surah and a particular prayer because it's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. For instance, in the sunnahs after Maghrib or even Fajr, you read Surah Al-Kafirun and Surah Ikhlas. If you do that regularly and you're specifying that for that rakat, it's not because you're neglecting the Quran, it's because you're practicing the sunnah. Prophet himself did that. Or for instance, in your witr, you recite, Surah Al-A'la in the first rakat is, sunnah. So if you want to take the blessings of the sunnah recitals and you stick to a particular surah or passage of the Quran, that's not a problem. But to separate something out that you just prefer and like, and then leave everything else and never read anything else, i.e., constantly this, then that would be disliked. It wouldn't be invalid because you're reading Quran in your prayer, but to kind of abandon or neglect the rest of the Quran, it's like a sign of not, realizing the importance of the whole Quran and what you've memorized of it. So obviously for ease, because you haven't memorized a lot, you're repeating certain things, that's fine, right? You're constantly sticking to something. You should learn a bit more Quran, of course, right? Really, every Muslim should try to memorize the last 10 surahs of the Quran as an absolute minimum. So you've got 10 surahs to read in your prayers. It'd be much better to memorize maybe 20 surahs of the Quran, so you get some longer ones as well as some common ones that even before the last 10. And if you really want to, I think it's doable for a lot of us still, is memorize the last juz', the last sapara, the last 30th of the Quran. Again, short surahs, lots of meanings, lots of lessons, are not recited by the imams most of the time anyway. The last juz' is often recited, various parts of it. But yeah, so if you're limited to something, it's not disliked, but you should really try have something more than the bare minimum, inshallah ta'ala. Yep.
It is disliked if one neglects to place a barrier when offering the prayer in a place where somebody is likely to pass in front of them.
Yeah, so we'll talk about this now in the next section more, but just the concept you're being disliked. If you're praying and you know that there could be people passing by, or you're not playing close to a wall, then even people aren't going to pass by. But you know what? Let me just put a sutra, a barrier, something in front to show people I'm offering the prayer. If they were to walk by, they were to think, they'd walk around the barrier. It's sunnah to take a barrier, therefore it's disliked to leave one if the wall isn't a barrier in the first place. If you're not really praying in a corner or somewhere, which then you don't need a sutra, the wall, the thing in front of you is more or less covering you. If you're praying in the open where people are going to pass by and so forth, to take a sutra is sunnah. Like I said, the next section is on that, so we can move on to that, inshallah. Tfaddal.
If the person intending prayer believes that someone will pass in front of him, then it is recommended for him to insert a barrier the height of an arm's length or more into the ground with a thickness equivalent to a finger.
Yes, so that's the sunnah. So if you feel that you're in a place where people are going to pass by, you're praying, it's sunnah to erect a stick or staff or something that is the thickness of a finger and is about an arm's length or slightly more. Arm's length is like half a meter or more. And what you try to do is, obviously, if the ground is suitable, in the old days it was sand and soil, grass, you could literally, stick this into the ground and it could be erect. Now, obviously, we pray on concrete floor, carpet flooring, concrete. Well, we don't pray on concrete, but we put a mat out on concrete, plastic for, wooden flooring and this kind of thing. So we can't really put anything solid out in front of us, masajid or otherwise, unless you're literally playing on the grass, which you can do. And to find something like that now is not as common as well, just lying around. So now what you can do is put a chair in front of you, put your bag in front of you, anything that's got some height to it, even a handspan, something like that. Like right now in this room, got loads of things, got boxes mainly, but anything really, couple of bags.
Would pillows work?
Pillows would work, yeah. I mean,
cushion.
it might seem a bit weird stacking pillows up in front of you, but yeah, it would work. It would count. It's if you know that someone's going to pass by, then I would take it. If you're pretty confident nobody's going to pass by and you don't want to start doing lots of things together and saying like, look, here's my sutra, it's like loads of pillows. But a pillow, even a pillow, just one pillow, if you can get it stood up on its side so it's a bit longer, not the lengthways, the widthways, depending on the type of cushion. If it's a small one, fine, get it stood up. Sometimes the bean bags and these kind of things, they're fine. Anything in front of you that people will walk around literally does the trick. It doesn't have to be massive. Look, I've got these. This is a good example. Right? I've got these wipes here, right? The screen wipes and stuff, right? We're using our computers a lot these days, right? Just that, and if I stick that in front of me, it's a handspan, but it's enough. Right? Somebody will see that and walk around it, and that's your sutra. So the sunnah actually is not a finger's length in thickness either, right? So the sunnah is a finger's length in thickness, which is your finger here, your thumb, let's say, and that's all leaking on me now. It's a new one, right? So all the sanitized in my hands, I suppose. That's the sunnah, but anything really does the trick. Yes, even a bag, like if you've got your laptop bag with you, good idea to put it in front of you as well. You can make sure nobody takes it. But yeah, that would count as a sutra really. If you could just put it in front of you, that would tell people you're praying. They'll go around it. Like I said, anything counts really. Yep. Next one. Carry on, Hassan.
The sunnah is to stand close to the barrier and to place it at either side of the forehead and not face it directly.
Yeah, so if you obviously in old days with a stick, whatever it is, even if it's a chair, and I've noticed this, I saw this before. I learned this from teachers, from imams and stuff. When they would pray to a sutra, I would see them put it to one side slightly, and they wouldn't put it directly in the middle of where they were praying. Because that's the sunnah, the Prophet wouldn't put it like directly in front. So the object would be slightly to one side. So if I can use this as an example again, I won't make it leak now. Right, so that about there, I'll get it right for you guys, about directly in front of me. So don't do that. Put it slightly towards the left like that, or towards the right like that. And it's in front of you though, so it's not like somebody's going to come and think it's not in front of me. It's in front of me, but it's slightly to one side, right? So to either eye would be okay, or even slightly out. As long as it's in front of you, that's what counts, right? It will be your sutra, right? This is how to do it. So now the question is, what if you've got nothing to put in front of you? What do you do in that situation? Bismillah.
If there is nothing available to place as a barrier, then one is to draw a long line lengthwise in front of him. While some scholars maintain that the line should be horizontal, like a crescent. Yeah, so you get a line and you draw it like that. So literally in the carpet you draw it, or if it was the sand in those days, right? So you'd make a mark showing people, look, I'm praying, don't come in within my area, my prayer area. That would count as the sutra, so people could walk around it. Now, because we've got carpets, because we've got flooring, you probably, if you made that mark with your hand, it'd just be symbolic. You wouldn't leave any trace behind. I mean, the carpet it might do, depending on the type of carpet. Some new ones and thick ones, you can see the pile kind of move one way. But in the old days, it was soil, it was practical, it was sand, it was, there'd be a mark left of some sort most of the time, right? Sometimes they had mats and stuff, which wouldn't work either. Or they say you draw the line vertically, so you put a line here like that, so the person goes on the top of that line, or horizontally. But the idea here is to make some kind of warning sign, or kind of notification to the people that I'm praying. Right? They can see you're praying when they see you, but they can also see where you're praying and your whole prayer area. So, and then it also is like anybody who passes behind it, the sutra, then passes behind the sutra, hasn't passed in front of your prayer, hasn't come into your space. Whereas without a sutra, even if you were to walk around where you're prostrating and just slightly in front, it would count as walking in front of you, right? So this helps stop this happening, or by default. The fact you got a sutra means whoever passes from outside of that hasn't passed in front of you, and they can pass, and so forth. So then obviously the situation arises, okay, what if somebody passes by and I've not got sutra, they're going to walk in front of me, I can't reach them, then that's it, that's the end of the story, you can't do anything. What if I can reach them? What if they walk past close to me? Can I stop them? Can I elbow them? Can I punch them? Some people get excited about this idea that
The hadith says, if somebody passes by you, then stop him because he's a shaitan. Right? There's a hadith like that, right? So what do we do in this situation, Hassan?
It's recommended, whether or not one has placed a barrier, not to drive back a person who tries to pass.
Yes. So if somebody does come, what's the better? It's allowed, as it's going to say, but it's better just let the person move. Right? You can end with your prayer. But it's allowed if you don't want that person to pass and you've seen it and you can think, oh, I'll stop him and carry it. I'll still be in my prayer concentrating. And then you can physically prevent them by putting your arm out, not literally, grabbing them and throwing them away. You can't break your prayer. So you can't do something that's, if you take both hands on somebody, that breaks the prayer. You put a hand out like this, but it's showing your screen, somebody can't pass by, right? Then that doesn't break the prayer. You got one hand here, it doesn't break the prayer, right? So you like this, somebody tried to pass by, you went like that, and you put your hand back, it doesn't break the prayer. So you can do that. It's going to mention that next. So Bismillah.
If someone tries to pass in front of the person praying, he is permitted to drive him back with gestures or with tasbih, such as saying glory be to Allah, though it is disliked to perform both.
Yeah, so gestures would be like, put your hand out, put your hand in the way. If they walk into your hand, they walk into your hand. You don't push them back literally. You just put the hand out to stop them. Gesture. But then if you're going to speak in the way of tasbih, so you can say Subhanallah, Subhanallah. Like, don't do both. Don't speak and make gestures. Then you're overdoing it, right? You should try and inform him in the way that you deem best. Or you could also raise your voice in recitation. Actually, the next point, Hassan.
A male is permitted to drive back those who try to pass by elevating his voice when reciting the Quran.
Yeah, so if you want to raise your voice to notify the person, look, I'm praying, avoid me, be careful, you can raise your voice. Next one.
Females are to ward off passers with gestures or with clapping of their hands, using the top part of the right hand onto the inside palm of their left hand.
Yep, carry on.
However, the women are not to raise their voice, not in recitation or in tasbih, because the voices are fitna.
Fitna, yeah, temptation, as it says there. So for ladies, the general idea is, obviously, if it's other men around in the public, some space where they're praying, this in private in the homes, not a big problem. Although generally raising the voices is discouraged among strangers, right? So this is a situation where that occurs. If it's just in your home, it's a child, it's a family member, then there's no harm in raising your recitation. But the sunnah is, or the way that it was taught, it says here, right? So the men should say Subhanallah and the women should clap, as written by Imam Bukhari, that if you see somebody passing by you or coming in front of you as a lady, then you, it says here, inside palm of the left hand, Sabi al-Yumna. Yeah, so you use your fingers of the right hand on the left hand. So you're there, you're going to be there. So you just tap, that's clapping. That's what it means here. Just tap there to notify them that you are in prayer. You don't say anything, not, signal more than the tapping as you just mentioned there. Okay. The next one. So do we actually go as far as getting physical with the person?
The one praying is not to inflict physical violence upon the one trying to pass. And with respect to what is related in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, this was uttered by the Prophet ﷺ at a time when one was still permitted to make actions in prayer. But indeed, such actions have been annulled.
Yeah, so the hadith of what that's referring to is also mentioned there. It says, when one of you prays, the Prophet said, he should not let anyone pass in front of him. He should move him away. I push him away as far as possible. But if he refuses, keeps on coming back, you should fight him, for he is only a devil. So you should get physical and so forth. So it says here physical violence. I think it's a strong translation. But actually, the word in Arabic is yuqatilu, which means to fight, right? Qatal, to fight. So you don't fight or get physical with the person who passes by. And obviously that which is mentioned in the hadith, which you just quoted, is regarded as something that was the early stage of prayer, an early stage of rules, where you could even give salam in prayer, as you mentioned last time. There was the concept of giving salam and replying to salam in salah. That's obviously nobody does that now. If you give salam, now it breaks the prayer. Similarly, the concept of pushing people away and stopping them physically is no longer the case. We don't get physical or start moving around and interacting with other people on a physical level when in the prayer. You can put your arm out, you can just put something there, but you can't literally grab, push, etc. That would mean you're not praying, you're pushing, you're dealing with somebody. No, you leave that. You just, like we said, it's better overall just to use it ishara, or overall to do nothing, just let it be. If you are going to do something, use the ishara indication or say subhanallah. Yep.
That section's there ended, Sheikh, on the
Yes,
dislike.
it has. You're right. Yes. So the next section is, so we've done what is disliked, and then the sutra discussion came after that. And now moving on to what is not disliked. Fima la yukrahu fis salah, that which is not disliked in the salah. So it's going to be several things which are simple and straightforward. It's just telling us that it's not disliked. Bismillah.
Just last week we mentioned about the scarf, the hanging, when you're going into ruku, and the hanging of a scarf on either side
Yep.
over your head. Does the same rule apply? If you've got a jacket on and have it unbuttoned, or
Yeah, we did. We spoke about that as well. We said if you've got something which you can put your your hands into the sleeves, and you don't, and you wear it over your shoulders, that's disliked. Yep. So if you're
if
wearing
you're
a
wearing jackets,
garment, if you're wearing a garment that's got sleeves, put your hands through the sleeves and then pray in it. Yeah, and it's just like not to do that. So anything that's going to hand down from that is disliked because you haven't put your hands in the sleeves. Once you put your hands in the sleeves, it might be an unbuttoned garment like a gown. It's fine. Doesn't need to be.
oh yeah, that was what I was getting. That you've got a jacket on, generally they
Yeah, as if you
unbutton
leave a jacket open as you go into the
hands.
ruku and sujood, it moves around. That's not a problem. No.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it depends on the jacket, but maybe it's more comfortable to pray with it open, to be honest. Right?
Yeah,
Because the
well,
movements and up and down, not all jackets are designed to kind of be so flexible.
yeah. Okay, that's good. That which is not disliked in prayer. To tie one's waist area is not disliked.
Yeah, meaning wearing a belt, tightening the trousers and all that kind of stuff. No, not a problem.
It is not disliked to carry a sword or something similar during prayer, provided it does not distract one with its movement.
Yeah, so in the olden days they had swords because that's what they carried in general, whether it was for a war or just protection or just generally, like just had that. So if you're carrying something in your pockets, your mobile phone, things like that, as long as it's not disturbing you, right? It's not vibrating and beeping, then it's not disliked. But any distraction that you carry is disliked, right? We need to understand that.
Placing the hands in the two openings at the front of the traditional shirt or in the split of the openings is not disliked, and this is a preferred view.
Placing the hands in the two openings at the front of the traditional shirt or in the split of the openings. I'm gonna have to check the Arabic on this one. Sorry. So what it means, from what I've understood, the basic English there is, I'll show you. When you're praying, it's not disliked to do that. Yeah. So some people pray like this. They hide. I can hide both actually, right? You want to keep them in your sleeves, right? Or this is the shiq here. I can't do it that way. I got to do it this way. You put your hand in there. That's not disliked. That's what I've understood. Is that what you've understood, Hassan?
Well, it says the openings of a traditional shirt. I'm just going to guess the openings would be the sleeves. So exactly how you've just explained it, putting the hands in the openings.
Right. So, I've got a marker on the Arabic where we stopped anyway. So we're just going to move on. So it says here عدم إدخال يديه في فرجيه وشقه المختار. Okay. Okay, so it says every garment that has 2 sleeves, right? So it's basically saying here that, no, it's actually saying something different, right? Which is, we'll leave that one, we'll move on from there. Carry on.
There is no dislike if there's a Quran in front of the person praying or a sword hanging in front of him.
Yeah, so swords hanging, objects like that, it's not a problem. Yep.
Quran in front, you probably got the Arabic in there, might explain better. Does that mean an open Quran that you can read from, or?
No, it just means like on the shelf. You know, you've got a Quran in front of you.
Praying towards the back of a person who is talking is not disliked. Likewise, praying towards a candle or lamp is not disapproved, and this is the most sound view.
So say that again. Read that again, please.
So praying towards the back of a person who is talking is not disliked. Likewise, praying towards a candle or a lamp is not disapproved. This is the most sound view.
Yeah, so again, praying towards, because they're not fires, they're just lighting. So if the light was in front of you somewhere, that's fine. So these things are being in front of you, don't, and if somebody's sitting down speaking, you know, that's not going to, if it's going to be issue, don't pray there, yeah, but it's not genuinely disliked, no.
To prostrate on a carpet that has pictures on it, resembling living beings, but not actually prostrating on them.
Yeah, so if you got like in front of you, you're not going to be doing the sajda on them, but they are in front of you, that you can see them. If they're behind you, not a problem. Or if they're under your feet, even not a problem. But you're not going to be prostrating on. If you're going to prostrate on them, it's going to be disliked. If they're going to be in front of you, again, it says not disliked. It's better not to have them somewhere in front of you, but visible, but you're not prostrating on them. Yeah, it's better not to actually. Any pictures are not good, unless it means here they're on the sides, you're not visible to you, which are then not a problem. But yeah, pictures on the, so it may just mean a pictured carpet with pictures on, but you're prostrating on, or you're in a part that you don't see any pictures. That's fine. So it could be like, so in the olden days they weren't all linear patterns. They made patterns in one corner. They had rugs more than carpets. So they might have a picture of something in the corner of the rug, and you're praying to the opposite direction. So there's that on the same rug as you. There's a picture of an animal. It's all right because it's behind you. It's in the corner. You're praying the other way. It was more like that in the past. Now you have recurring patterns and stuff, right? We don't have many animals in carpets these days anyway. So yeah, so that it would be disliked if it was in front of you and visible, you know, but not if it's behind. Yep.
Killing a snake or scorpion, fearing that they may cause harm, even if it takes multiple strikes to kill them, and during which one skews from the direction of prayer, is not disliked, and this is the most evident view on the matter.
Yeah, so we're allowed to fight or kill or, you know, repel harm of these particular animals. It says snake, did it say right? Hayya and scorpion. If you fear they're going to harm you, and you can stamp on it, or you can, you know, if you've got a stick next to you, hit it and then carry on with your prayer. They don't even break your prayer. Even if you have to move to the Qibla slightly and so forth, but not, let's say, a dog. The hadith, because this is just the hadith. So normally you'd say any form of moving away from the prayer, fighting something, repelling something would break the prayer, which it does. So there's dogs, there's and any animal for that matter. But for these particular ones, the Prophet said that if you see these fawasiq in your prayer, one or two things were mentioned as well, then fight them and repel them, don't let them harm you, and carry on praying. So you're allowed to do that in the prayer. It was given permission in the hadith. But certain animals were mentioned, certain creatures, harmful creatures, and it's restricted to them, and it's not a general rule. Okay, which is not going to be very likely. But if you whatever, of course, the better option is to run for your life if you think that's the best option, and then pray later. But yeah, if you were somebody who wants to fight and kill, best of luck. Yeah, next one.
There is no harm if one shakes his clothes to prevent them from sticking to his body in the bowing posture.
Yeah, so we said there is no need, it's disliked. When there is a need to loosen the clothing, it's stuck to you, or it's gonna, when you're going to sajda, it's gonna get all stuck in places. Then in that case, you can, no harm. There's probably better to move the clothing, loosen the clothing. Yeah.
There is no objection if one wipes his forehead from dirt or grass after the prayer is complete, and neither is it disliked prior to its completion if it disturbs one's concentration in prayer.
Yeah, so we said previously, it's just like there's no need. If there is a need, then as long as it's not done constantly or more than the need required, and it is something that's harming or disturbing, then there's no. It's probably recommended, I'd say. But you see, it's common not disliked. Leaving it probably might be more rewarding, or just more. If you're focused on not letting it disturb you, that's fantastic. But yeah, if you want to remove that, go ahead.
If one looks right or left through the corner of his eyes without turning the face, it's not disliked.
So we talked about turning the head, that's disliked. Doesn't break the prayer. Turning the chest away, the full body chest, would break the prayer if it's more than 45 degrees away from the Qibla. Turning the head was disliked. The eyes, if you just look from the corner of your eyes and then look back, obviously is not good. And I would, there is a level of you're taking away from your concentration. But yeah, if you ended up, quickly glancing for some reason, it's not considered. It's not really from, as it says this, however, it's better to omit because it is from the conduct of prayer to look at the area of prostration. But you could say, it doesn't affect my concentration, I'm still carrying on with my prayer. Some people look straight and they pray. They say that's fine. Obviously, the sunnah is to look at that particular prayer point of prostration. So really, not to do that is not the ideal situation. But if it doesn't actually disturb you, or you're not doing it for a reason that's taking your concentration away, it would be because of dislike, to be honest. Yeah.
There is no harm if one prays on a mattress, carpet, or board. However, the best prayer is on the ground, on that which the earth produces.
Yeah, so when it says mattress here, we should be careful. It's a translation of the word furush. And furush, now firash, is used for bedding and stuff like that. What it means is any kind of thick material and soft kind of material that is maybe used for bedding, like a thin mattress. Obviously, the mattresses in those days weren't massively thick, 6 inches like we have today, and they were pretty solid as well, right? Or any kind of similar things, which is a carpet or lubud, thick cloth, solid board of wood or something like that. All of these are fine to pray on, as long as they're solid. Like we can do our sajda and they're firm. But it's better, of course, to pray on the actual earth and what the earth produces, or grass and things like this. That is good. Yep, that's good.
So if you have a back garden or a lawn or something, it's better. And if you can, it's good to pray outside.
Yeah, if you can, if you want to pray outside in the nice weather, mashallah, we've got in the UK right now, then Bismillah, go outside and pray in the garden. Bismillah is a good
without
idea.
the use of masala or anything.
Without the use of masala, you can put masala down, you can put a cloth down, but if you want to pray without the masala even, Bismillah, go ahead. Brilliant. Okay. In the olden days, so the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was mats in the masjid, but it was like them straw mats. They didn't have like expensive carpets and things like that. They were just them basic straw mats, and they wouldn't cover the whole masjid as well. So there were parts where they prayed in the sand, there were parts they prayed in the mats. Obviously now they've got nice lush carpets, and everybody wants a piece of them, right? It is okay to pray on these things. It's honoring the prayer in a sense, but I think majority, if not all, the scholars said it's just better to pray on the normal ground, whether it's soil, whether it's grass, sand. Obviously tarmac these days isn't too comfortable, but whatever the normal ground is. Most of us got carpets and prayer mats. Use them. Some said it's good now because that is showing honor and it helps concentration and is more the etiquette of the prayer now, because we all consider everything else to be like, not filthy, but not the norm. So we actually consider putting the prayer mat out an etiquette of prayer, honoring of the prayer. So it's probably better to stick to that. Allahu alam, the rules are rules. They don't really change with our opinion. So yeah, praying on the ground is still better. Yeah.
There is no harm if one repeats the same surah in 2 rakahs of voluntary prayer.
Yeah, we did mention this before as well, that you shouldn't repeat the same surah in 2 rakats. In the fard prayer, it's better to pick different surahs. We said the companions were a bit startled when the Prophet did this, so it's showing it's okay. In the fard prayer, in the nafil prayer, you pray what you want, so you can repeat the same surah many times in the same rakat. You can recite in the first rakat and then repeat the same surah in the second rakat. The area, the section of nafil, your nafil prayers is open to lots of. So when you talk about doing lots of tasbihat, this isn't described in the fard prayer of the Prophet ﷺ. When the Prophet spent a lot of time in ruku is in the nafil, in the tahajjud prayers, in his own prayers. So at that time it's when you should be doing like, let's do 20 tasbihs or 21 or 29 or odd numbers. There's no particular numbers, just odd number is good. Of tasbihs in your ruku and sujood and so forth. Don't do that in the fard prayer or with the congregation. Congregation prayer, the Prophet would be very to the point. He wouldn't be hasty or anything, but he'd be swift and pray, but with serenity, calmness. But compared to his other prayers, which were nawafil and sunnahs, etc., he would be a lot more lengthier, standing, prostrations, bowing, tasbihat, du'as were included in the nafil prayers, and in the fard prayers it was kept to the standard procedure for the sake of everyone, for everyone to learn the basics and pray in this manner. So nafil is generally a lot more vast in its actions. Okay, so now the next section, Hassan, is, and our viewers as well, is on when do you have to cut off the prayer? When do I stop praying? Like what situation could arise where I would have to cut off and stop and help somebody or do something else? When would that occur? So Bismillah, if you want to read the next section.
It is wajib to cut off prayer if there are desperate calls for help, though not with the normal calls of a parent.
Yeah. So first we're talking about the fard prayer right now, right? So when you are praying your fard prayer, your Zuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, fard rakats as well. So when you say fard prayer, guys, we mean the fard rakats only. So the 3 rakats of Maghrib, the 4 rakats of Isha. Your sunnah rakats are another prayer. They're part of the prayer, but they're not the same ruling as the fard, as we know. So when you're praying the fard rakats of any prayer, or even the witr, which is wajib, and other wajib prayers, and somebody calls upon you for help, then you must, and you are, really in dire need, i.e., not just can you come and give me a hand lifting something, not that help, right? It says here, desperate call, right? So it says it there, somebody in dire need. You witness something, you might not be calling out, you witness somebody in dire need. In that situation, prayer is not the most important thing. Preservation of life and health of another human being is the important thing, is the priority. And this is the beauty of Islam. We have our understanding of preservation of life, religion, wealth, lineage, honor. And in this case, the life of a person takes precedence, or their well-being, etc. And you go and help them and respond to the call. But not if it's just merely a call for, give me a hand, can you come and see me? Or if a parent says that as well, even if that's a parent as well, and you're in the fard's prayer, you say to them afterwards, I'm sorry I didn't respond straight away, I was praying my salah. And they should understand that when obligation, and they're not in dire need, right? Dire need with a parent, otherwise you'd respond straight away. So you feel there's a dire need and you don't know exactly, then maybe take on the side of caution and respond, and see if it was a dire need. But obviously you would know from the call or the situation whether it's absolutely necessary or not. So in a general situation, parents being one of them calling upon you, you wouldn't abandon the obligatory prayer. You'd pray, and then you'd say, and it'd be wise to say afterwards, sorry for the delay, I was praying. That's it. Bismillah.
It is permissible to cut off prayer if there is a thief who is stealing anything equivalent to a dirham, even if the property belongs to someone else, or because one fears a wolf, or something like it is about to attack the sheep, or fears that a blind man may fall into a well or a hole.
Yeah, so that was an example. I think you witnessed the harm going to occur. So the first point is that theft. If somebody's going to steal, it says a dirham. I suppose you can stop them from anything really, because theft is theft, right? But some said dirham levels, I suppose. Even if it's somebody else's, or you can leave it as well. You can say, oh, you know what? Consider it a gift. Let him have it, right? I don't want to argue with him. I don't care if he doesn't know it. He thinks he's taking it without me knowing. Or you can stop, have a little hustle bustle here, and obviously have to sort a person out for trying to take your stuff. And obviously it's expensive, right? If you've got your mobile phone, I'm pretty sure you're gonna stop your prayer to save your phone, which is allowed. Obviously valuables, not just valuable in terms of the monetary value, but it could be otherwise. Personal ID, belongings, and cards and etc. They're sometimes more valuable than money. They could cause a lot of problems for you, the loss of them, and you may have some private information, whatever, right, stored, etc. So yeah, to retrieve that or to stop that from being stolen, you can cut your prayer off. Yes, it says yajuzu because it's your choice. You want to let it go. Yes, but then I don't get what it says. Fear of wolf on your sheep is yajuzu. You can let the wolf eat your sheep. I suppose you could if you want to feed him a sheep, right? It's your choice. But I think you'd want to, if it's not your sheep, then you've got to save him. So it would be required for you to cut your prayer off. If somebody else says you're a shepherd, looking after somebody's sheep, don't cut your prayer off, save the sheep. Don't let a wolf eat them or take one. And similarly, if you're seeing somebody fall into a well and you feel like this blind person is going to hit an obstacle, there's a car or something, you know what? Let me just start my prayer. Look, make sure that person's safe, and then it'd be required in those situations, not just allowed. It says at the beginning it's permissible. Permissible when you fear theft or when you see theft, etc. That's your choice. When you see harm occurring or about to occur, you're sure it's going to occur. You're not just being extra cautious. You actually can see the danger imminent, and if you don't respond now, somebody's going to fall into a hole. Don't let it happen and say, oh, I was praying. No, stop it. So here we would say it's required to stop the harm occurring in such situations, right? It says that afterwards. If the one observing prayer believes that a blind man may fall in a hole, it becomes wajib, right? To disengage prayer and attend to him. In this case, the person praying has a duty of care towards this person. Yeah, so Wallahu alam, why they were put together. I think there may be some words missing there or something, right? But yeah, I think that's clear, right? So if it's just theft, your choice. If it's harm going to occur to you or someone else, then stop the prayer and prevent the harm. Next one.
It is wajib for the midwife or nurse to cut off the prayer if she fears the death of a child or its mother. If she has not started the prayer, then there is no harm in delaying the prayer and attending to the child or mother.
Yeah, so there's two situations here, right? First of all, if the midwife fears for the life of the child, okay, so it's yajuzu, it's allowed for her. Obviously, it's a judgment she has to make, right? To I'm going to be praying, I'm not going to be attentive for a few minutes. Can I spare those few minutes? If there is danger, it's necessary. I would say yes, it's necessary. Why did we read that, right? I wonder why.
Yeah.
Where the word necessary wasn't mentioned in the Arabic. I'm looking at the Arabic, right? Because it comes from it is permissible if there is a thingy. Then it also jumps to wajib. So maybe like I said, maybe there's something missing in the English and Arabic at some point here.
Would that point still be valid if, let's say, the time for Zohar is ending and you might miss namaz?
Yeah. For the midwife, that would be the case. Yeah. So if the midwife fears for the life of the child, don't pray. Look after the mother of the child, right? If there's no fear of any harm, but it's obviously imminent kind of thing, it's going to happen. It's a choice now. Do I pray and not worry about the child because there's no harm at the moment? There's no danger. It could develop, but there's no danger at the moment. There's no problem. Or can I, or should I just focus on this and get the birth done? It's a choice at that point where there's no harm or no problem. On that one, yeah, if the prayer time is going out, finish the prayer, pray the prayer first, and then attend to the child and so forth. But if there's actual danger and you're the one who's responsible and in charge, and everything's on your neck, and you're the qualified person, then make sure you preserve life. Make sure everything's well, even if that means the prayer time expires. So the same for like a surgeon, for instance, right? If you're doing surgery, of course, in the olden days, they timed the surgery. Even then, if you time the surgery around prayer times, it could go longer and longer. And you didn't expect it to go through the whole prayer time. But right now, in the middle of a surgery, I wanted to finish it in an hour, 2 hours, but we've gone over. And now the prayer time is about to exit. But if we leave the surgery and this individual who's cut open, we could lose them, right? We could cause serious damage to them. Let's get this finished. We're going to miss the prayer. You're going to miss the prayer then, right? So similarly, this rule applies to people of such professions where your attention is required constantly, that you couldn't not do the job without that, right? Of course, you plan your schedule, and of course, we're not in this part of the world, not in control of schedules, or your job doesn't necessarily cater for your prayer times, let's say. So if your job is like that, you still have the job. It's an important role, and you need to. If that's an amazing thing to do. The example would be something like air traffic controller. You go to be air traffic controller, you can't say, pause 5 minutes, let me go and pray my prayers. If you've got a second, third backup person, yes, you can take over 5 minutes and pray. If you haven't, you're literally the person in charge, the person trying to land planes. Then your salah waits until you are free or you get a break. And if that means that you had a shift of an hour or two, but usually by law they usually give you breaks every couple of hours, so you should be able to fit your prayer times in. If you end up, most likely it's going to be you end up in a situation where, if I leave my post right now, I shouldn't have been in the situation, but I'm in a situation I didn't pray in time. The windows I had, I didn't use them. Now I'm okay to pray. I want to pray, but I'm working right now. And if I leave this post and go and do that, the machine's going to collapse. The airplanes are going to crash. Whatever. You can't. You've got to make sure no harm comes to others and fulfill that role. If you can get somebody to quickly take over and give you the 5 minutes, brilliant. If you can't, you just work until your time comes. Somebody comes and relieves you of the duty. And if that means you missed your prayer, you missed your prayer. You don't say, right, I got to pray. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. I'm going to shut off the machines. Or the factory shuts down for your prayer. You can't do that, and you'll probably lose your job as well. You can't say, yeah, forget about the planes, and who cares if they're flying around waiting for me, right? Just making air traffic jams or whatever, right? That's not how you should do that. People are going to be thinking what a crazy person you are. Your prayer. It's not really a good thing for Muslims to practice that as well, right? You've got to use some common sense, right? So if you do find yourself, just a bit of advice there for people who might be thinking about, their work or the situation, or they might know someone, that what if I'm in a situation where I'm needed at work, I can't leave my post, and I'm going to miss the prayer. And obviously it's an essential role. It's not one of those where they just want you to stay because, it's like your time is you should say to them, look, I know it's my hours and so forth, but it's not going to harm me to take 5 minutes and come back. It's not going to harm the work, right? And I'll make it by the end. So I'll leave 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later. You can live with that. They should give you that 5-10 minutes, obviously. If it's not going to be a major issue, unless they're awkward employers, right? And you might find that. Then speak to someone about it, right? I suppose communication is important, but that's another story in itself. Similarly, Hassan, if you want to carry on.
This is also the case of a traveler fears from a thief, highway robber fears from
an animal. Yeah. So again, same ruling, that meaning you run for safety, you run for protection. So let's say you're traveling and you're in an area where if you stop here, might get abducted or something, right? Obviously we've got services and things like that in the UK, but in the olden days it was like highway robbers were common. And there's films made about how many people go missing every year in the Australian outback, and how many this, that, the other. People go missing still. So yeah, I wouldn't stop in the middle of random place and then start praying, and then all of a sudden you got problems, right? If you fear a place, you're passing through somewhere, you didn't expect it to be so spooky, and you're scared, and you're genuinely scared, right? Drive through, get to safety, get to a place, not just lights and a person. These days you don't know who's who, right? Get to a more public place where you see bodies, and then pray. That means missing the prayer, even, yeah, because you don't want to stop and you got no life left. You're abducted or something, right? So if you genuinely, olden days it was a lot more. By the way, you might think I'm going a bit overboard, but it was a lot worse in the olden days. Muslim and non-Muslim lands, this idea of highway robbers was common. And like I said, there is parts of the world still where it does happen. So yeah, if you're in that kind of place, so it's animals you're driving past, or I'm saying driving because we drive these days, or you're traveling through, or you fear, so you might not be able to pray because of you're constantly protecting yourself with a sword in your hand, right? Well, how can I pray? You can't, right? Let me get safety, and then maybe think about praying, right? So animals may not be the case for our day and age, but maybe fear of harm from around us could be. So that's in terms of cutting off the prayer that you're praying because of a need and necessity, right? What about somebody who doesn't even pray, who's abandoned the prayer in terms of neglects the prayer day and night, 5 times a day, 7 days a week, all year round? What's ruling on those who don't pray in Islam? Okay, Bismillah, Hassan.
The one who intentionally neglects prayer due to laziness or idleness is to be beaten harshly until blood flows from his body and is then imprisoned until he performs his prayers. This ruling also applies for one who does not fast in Ramadan. However, one is not to be killed unless he rejects the belief that prayer and Ramadan are obligatory, or unless he belittles either one of them.
If you're all in trouble, now I'm only joking. So this ruling, by the way, you've got to remember fiqh books. This is a fiqh book of a traditional or law manuals. So this particular law mentioned here, although we're studying purification and prayer, is the laws that are given to a government, Islamic government, right? Some kind of governance authorities, what they should do, and these laws are based on a societal level, not individual level. Okay, that's what the government does. It doesn't do individual. So the government won't come to your house and say, "Do you pray or not?" You don't pray at home, and it's not a public thing. There's no question asked. They might ask, but nobody's going to take you to task. Only it's between you and Allah. Whether you don't fast, you don't give your zakat, you will be taken to task. There's massive repercussions in this life and the next, and it's not nice. But the authorities don't get involved. Okay. On a societal level, the authorities do get involved. So if you're openly abandoning your prayers, you're setting a bad example for others, right? If you're openly, eating in the middle of Ramadan when all the shops are closed and everybody's fasting, and you're constantly throwing back a burger, and everybody's like, "What the heck's going on? Is this person ill? Is this person, The Muslims would have good opinion about this, right? So maybe the person's got an excuse not to fast. Nah, I don't want to fast. Can't be bothered. Wait a minute, what's going on here? That now is affecting societies, harming everyone around you. It's rejecting the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, publicly making a mockery of the laws of Islam and the religion and practices. As a Muslim, you're setting a bad example for those in your family, especially if you're like a father or a mother or an elder sibling. The younger ones are going to say, "Well, he didn't fast, he didn't do this." So this moral degradation will occur in society if we allow this to occur publicly. So for that reason, there has to be some form of reprimand, okay? Because the goals of Islam are not, the same goals as other laws, right? The Islamic goals and laws and Sharia is based on different factors, and religious practice being one of the major factors. So our marital laws are based on the religious laws. Our commerce laws, there's certain religious laws that prohibit certain transactions because Allah has prohibited them, like usury. So the authorities will get involved. What do they do? Now, what they do is what's mentioned here is what was done at that time, okay? And there's a difference of opinion what should be done, okay? But one point to remember here is the person's being lazy and neglectful, not denial of obligation. So the person's not saying, "I don't believe in a prayer, I don't believe in a fast, I don't believe in these things, are made up parts of Islam, I don't know what you're on about." No, that's disbelief, that's blasphemy. The person's saying, "There's an obligation of prayer, there's an obligation of fasting, I'm just too lazy, I can't be bothered." Which is also problematic, it's very sinful, but it's not disbelief. You've got to draw the line between Iman and Kufr. And Iman is to deny something. Kufr is to deny something of faith, right? And sinfulness is to be lazy in practicing the faith, right? Which is not good. We're not trying to justify. We're just trying to show you the difference between kufr, disbelief, and itham, sin, guilt. So now what's mentioned was what Imam Abu Hanifa and some scholars said should be practiced in order to repel this problem in society. Okay, and what that should be is they should be punished, they should be jailed, they should be confined. That doesn't mean we have to practice that now. Doesn't mean the current law of this right now. There's no authority to imply this upon us anyway, so nobody needs to go around saying anything to anyone. So right now, in today's day and age, and talking about the Muslims in the West or where there's no Islamic rule over them, nobody needs to go to anybody and say, "Why are you not praying for? You're going to get this. You're going to get that. I'm going to jail you." You have a moral obligation to those around you, so your children, your spouses, your friends and family that you have an influence over. You shouldn't just ignore them, but you don't actually have any legal right to go and criticize somebody. So if a stranger is not praying, you can't go to him and say, "Bro, why are you not praying for? You know that's haram. you know you're going to go to hellfire. You have no right to say that to someone. Islamically, that person with wisdom, yes. You see somebody not doing something right, doing something haram, with wisdom you have a right. Even in law, you may have to maybe stop some things, harms happening. Yeah, but with wisdom, say, "Oh, how you doing, bro? You okay?" You know, talk to the person first, get on a level, and then say, you know, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Maybe say, mind your own business. Mind your own business, then, right? So you don't have a right to impose on other people's business if they're sinning. They shouldn't make a public show of it still. But in this world, we don't live in that law, so there's no law applied. There's no Islamic law applied to us here in the UK. But of course, we need to adhere as much as we can, and are allowed to the Islamic rules and morals and obligations that have been placed upon us. So yes, in the olden days, they said, some scholars in the olden days, you should execute somebody who abandons the prayer and is, constantly, publicly not praying and showing a no prayer attitude. Execution it would be the result, right? Imam Hanifa was a bit more merciful. He said, no, don't kill them. Just lock them up and, reprimand them, flog them a little bit, give them a bit of a reminder, just to show them the severity of their public. And the person can say, I'll pray, leave me alone. And that's it, Whether he prays at home or not is another question. We don't go chasing after him, say, right, let's go check on him now after a week, is he praying or not? As long as he's not publicly making a display of these kind of things, leave people to themselves. Islam doesn't, the authorities in Islam don't chase you and find out who's right and wrong and this, that, either. As long as there's harmony in society, whatever happens in the confines of your own home is fine. On a public level, any law would deal with the issues. Islamic law deals with these levels of issues as well. And there's some of the rulings mentioned there. And that was, and also one other element I will add on to this is that what was considered an act of transgression or an act of violence or treason or something like this in the past, just generally, not in Islamic terms, may not be the case anymore. Okay, like people say, I'm just giving an example, by the way. I don't say this. Who cares about the Queen of England? We don't like her. Not important. We follow the rules. We respect the law, but we don't care about royalty. This, that, the other. Who cares about them? May they, people say bad things. I'm not going to say them, right? In the past, that would result in hung, drawn, and quartered. You can't make those statements. Anybody who's heard to say that, get them in, chop them up, make a display of them. That was considered treason. That was considered. You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to verbally show that now. I think you're allowed to say it verbally now still as well, probably. But they won't apply the law that was in the past of hung, drawing, quoting you, right? But that was the response at the time. At that time and that culture, let's say, that the way of reprimand, the way of making this law, enacting that law, which is not to be treacherous, was seen as this. If you're doing that, you're treacherous. The punishment of treachery was this. So now, same thing now. Abandoning the prayer was considered that then. Okay, people are abandoning the prayer now, but they're doing it privately. They're doing it in a world where we don't have. It does affect people, when one person doesn't pray, etc. But it's not the same world. We live in the same social settings and so forth. So that does have an impact on the way we apply the ruling. The ruling doesn't change in terms of it's haram, it's sinful. But look, scholars differ on what you do with that person in the past anyway. So they're going to differ now what you do with that person today. So even if you come to, I'm trying to say, even if you come to an Islamic government, fully Islam and everything today, would we go and start executing people or locking them up? Maybe not. Maybe we have other mechanisms today of dealing with people in an Islamic world, in an Islamic society, law and order, of those who don't pray. Doesn't mean that just because that was what was done in the past, it must be done now in the 21st century as well, right? So this is something to understand, that, like I said, these are manuals of law written on traditional things. Things have changed drastically in the last century or so, right? Go back 250, 200 years, all of this was the norm, and across the world, these kind of things and the way of dealing with things. Even you go back 50 years, caning and the, physical punishment, it was all part of society. It was norm. It was the norm. Nobody, batted an eyelid. It was what's going. This is normal. It was just part of society. It was the norm. The norm. So things change, and they may well change in these rulings. These rulings that are, how do we get the best out of people? How do we reprimand people? Not in the fact that it's haram, it shouldn't be done, there's a sin with Allah. The rulings don't change that. Abandoning the prayer is abandoning the prayer and haram, right? So hopefully that's clear. Not people won't take that and start jumping to conclusions regarding these kind of statements in books of fiqh. And this is the thing: books of fiqh are manuals of law. You don't go, as a let's say a UK British citizen or European citizen, pick up the books of law and start criticizing the European Union or the British government, and saying, look at this, look at that, what's going on here, this, that, the other. Who does that? The solicitors, right? The law experts, those who study the whole subject. They'll pick up the law and they'll say, right, this got a wording here. What does this mean here? Based on this, we should be able to do this. And they'll start challenging and they'll start discussing and figuring out the law and so forth. Now, Islamic law is not the same as British law or any type of worldly law. It's much more pristine and has its methods and foundations and principles. But the concept of law is the same. It's a body of rules that are implemented for a people, that are only carried out by an authority, right? And so forth. So these processes need to be understood, and who has the rights and the roles in the processes as well. So don't just take a book of law and say, right, bang, and this part of this book generally is actually just, you can just take it and practice it, because it's personal practice of worship law. It's more theological than it is social, etc. But this point here is not. This point here is on a level of judicial, social law, not a my law. What do I do? All this stuff, what's this like in my prayer, what I'm doing is personal, theological kind of stuff. Whereas this is more on a social level, right? So that's important to understand the difference between, inshallah ta'ala. Is that understood, Hassan?
Absolutely, yeah. It's good clarity that as well. At least we can all put our weapons away now.
Alhamdulillah. Any questions for today regarding what we've discussed?
No, I think pretty much the last few pages were pretty much straightforward, to be honest with you.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So what we'll do there, guys, thank you for joining us today. Jazakumullah khair, and we'll stop and we'll continue from the chapter with the next Wednesday. So I know it's the end of Ramadan, Eid's coming up, etc. But it's the days not going to affect our days of this Wednesday class. So we'll see you all next Wednesday. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.